Perhaps no secret organization in the history of mankind has acquired such an incredible number of myths as the Freemasons. Official history states that Freemasonry originates from medieval builders' guilds. In 1717, the first Grand Lodge was founded in London, and since then the Brotherhood has grown around the world, counting today about 6 million members. The Freemasons themselves position themselves as a philosophical and educational society, the main goal of which is moral self-improvement, charity, and the desire to make this world a better place. Sounds quite harmless, but it is precisely the closed nature of their rituals, the strict hierarchy of degrees of initiation, and the rich visual attributes that have turned the Freemasons into the main target for conspiracy theorists. The main trigger for conspiracy theory lovers is the all-seeing eye, or the radiant delta, as well as the square and compasses with the letter G. When the eye in the pyramid appeared on the reverse side of the Great Seal and the US $1 bill, this became for many undeniable proof that the Freemasons control the global economy. The conspiracy theory claims Freemasonry is just a facade. Behind the screen of charity hides a shadow government, which pulls the strings of presidents, dictates the course of wars, and controls global financial flows. The goal of this behind-the-scenes syndicate is the destruction of traditional states, the erasing of borders, and the establishment of the so-called New World Order. The situation is exacerbated by the fact that in the mass consciousness, Freemasons are often associated with the Order of the Illuminati, a secret society founded in Bavaria in 1776 by Adam Weishaupt. He did indeed try to infiltrate his people into Masonic lodges to promote the ideas of the Enlightenment. And although the Bavarian Illuminati were crushed by the authorities as early as the end of the 18th century, conspiracy theorists are convinced that they simply went deep underground, merged with the top of Freemasonry, and still secretly rule the planet. The names of the founding fathers of the USA, influential politicians, bankers, and figures of art regularly pop up in the lists of secret masters, from the French Revolution to the creation of the Federal Reserve System. In every major historical upheaval, supporters of the theory find a Masonic trace. And although researchers prove time and time again that modern Freemasonry is more of an elite club of interests rather than a sinister puppeteer, the myth of the secret rulers of the world remains surprisingly resilient. After all, it is always easier to believe that the chaos of world history is controlled by a handful of people in aprons than to admit that the world is complex and sometimes absolutely uncontrollable. Atlantis. This myth first appears in the texts of the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 BC. Plato describes a powerful and incredibly advanced maritime power located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the modern Strait of Gibraltar. According to him, the Atlanteans attempted to enslave Athens, but suffered defeat. And then, having angered the gods with their pride and greed, the entire continent went underwater in one terrible day and one wretched night. Most ancient authors perceive this story exclusively as a philosophical allegory, a political parable about an ideal state and the destructiveness of arrogance. However, over the centuries, from a cautionary myth, Atlantis turned into an object of fanatic search. Hundreds of expeditions have tried to find traces of the lost continent. The geography of the searches is striking. From the classic Atlantic version in the area of the Azores to Antarctica and South America. In the scientific community, the most plausible hypothesis is considered to be the Minoan one. The legend could have been born from a real catastrophe, the colossal eruption of a volcano on the island of Santorini in the Mediterranean Sea around the 15th century BC, which destroyed the Minoan civilization. But conspiracy theorists and esotericists are not satisfied with such prosaic explanations. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the myth of Atlantis experienced a rebirth thanks to the Theosophical Society of Helena Blavatsky. She claimed that the Atlanteans were a highly developed fourth root race of humanity, possessing magical knowledge and technologies inaccessible to us. Later, this idea was distorted by Nazi occultists. The Ahnenerbe organization seriously equipped expeditions, trying to prove that the surviving Atlanteans became the progenitors of the Aryans. In the second half of the 20th century, popular literature firmly linked Atlantis with the mysticism of the Bermuda Triangle. Theories emerged that at the bottom of the ocean, there are still operating giant energy crystals of the Atlanteans, because of which modern ships and airplanes have instrument malfunctions, which leads to their mysterious disappearances. Some enthusiasts even believe that a part of the inhabitants of Atlantis evolved and still secretly lives in underwater domes, observing humanity. Despite the complete lack of geological evidence for the existence of a sunken continent at the bottom of the Atlantic, this theory remains one of the most beautiful and enduring. It has become a perfect canvas on which every mystic or conspiracy theorist can draw the version of the past that is advantageous to them. Big Pharma. The term Big Pharma itself initially appeared in journalism to designate the largest transnational pharmaceutical corporations, and it must be admitted that there are indeed well-founded claims against them. Artificial inflation of prices for patented drugs, aggressive marketing, lobbying of laws, and of course the monstrous opioid crisis in the USA, provoked by the thirst for profit. But precisely where there is a real problem, opacity, and trillions of dollars, the darkest conspiracy theories instantly bloom. Within the framework of classic conspiracy theory, Big Pharma is no longer just a group of corporations. It is a global, all-powerful cartel, uniting drug manufacturers, government regulators, research scientists, the World Health Organization, and even ordinary attending physicians. Conspiracy theorists are firmly convinced it is absolutely unprofitable for this syndicate for people to be healed. The main dogma sounds cynical. A healthy person brings no profit, a dead one either, so the ideal client is a chronically ill patient. The most popular myth within this theory states that a cheap and 100% effective cure for cancer, HIV, and other severe ailments was found decades ago. However, corporations ruthlessly buy up patents for these miracle remedies and hide them in safes, while independent scientists trying to uncover the truth are intimidated or eliminated. Instead of healing, we are supposedly forced into expensive chemotherapy and drugs that only mask the symptoms, forcing people to sit on the medication needle for life. In more radical versions, it is claimed that new viruses are developed artificially in secret laboratories with the sole purpose to create panic and sell another batch of vaccines. This myth began to actively gather its audience back in the 70s, when supporters of alternative medicine assured that oncology could be treated with a raw food diet or herbs, and doctors just want to poison you. In the age of the internet, this distrust has turned into a real informational epidemic. People began to massively refuse vaccinations and pills, believing that the medical community is in a global conspiracy. This paranoia reached its apogee during the COVID-19 pandemic, spawning rumors about genetic experiments and even liquid microchips under the guise of vaccination. The tragic irony of this conspiracy theory lies in its real consequences. By demonizing a truly harsh and imperfect medical industry, conspiracy theorists push desperate people into the arms of fake gurus, esotericists, and sellers of natural dummy pills. Trying to escape from Big Pharma, people give their last money to charlatans selling false hope, and too often pay for this deception with their own lives. Moon Conspiracy. On July 20th, 1969, millions of people watched with bated breath as Neil Armstrong took his first step on the lunar dust. According to official data, between 1969 and 1972, The US carried out 6 successful landings as part of the Apollo program. But what if humanity's greatest triumph is nothing more than a grandiose hoax? Proponents of the theory are absolutely certain no human foot has ever stepped on the moon. According to their version, the US government and NASA, desperately losing the space race to the Soviet Union, resorted to an unprecedented deception. It is claimed that all photographs, video recordings, telemetry, and lunar samples were fabricated, and the legendary footage was shot in secret pavilions. In popular folklore, this directing is often attributed to Stanley Kubrick. The real rockets either flew empty into low orbit or were replaced by the work of unmanned drones. As evidence, conspiracy theorists present a set of classic questions. Why are there no stars in the photographs? Why is the American flag waving in a vacuum? How did the astronauts survive the deadly Van Allen radiation belts? And why do shadows from objects fall in different directions, as if studio spotlights are working on a film set? This idea gained widespread popularity in the 1970s after the publication of Bill Kaysing's book, We Never Went to the Moon. This image was firmly cemented in minds by the 1977 feature film Capricorn 1, which tells the story of a cynical government falsification of a flight to Mars. Viewers watched the movie and decided it was exactly the same with the moon. The irony is that scientific and historical facts shatter this theory to dust. The main common sense argument is the position of the USSR. At the height of the Cold War, the Soviet Union had the most powerful radio interception stations and every motive to publicly humiliate America by catching it in a lie. But Soviet military personnel and astronomers closely monitored the Apollos from launch to landing, recording radio signals directly from the lunar surface. Not a single serious Soviet specialist ever questioned the American flights. In addition, the astronauts brought hundreds of kilograms of lunar soil back to Earth, which has been studied by independent laboratories around the world for decades. Its unique composition completely matched the samples later delivered by the Soviet Luna series automatic stations. And the mirror reflectors left by the Americans on the surface are still used daily by observatories in different countries for laser ranging of the moon. Pizzagate. This story erupted in the US in 2016, at the very height of the tense presidential race between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. It all started with a real event. The WikiLeaks organization published the hacked email archive of John Podesta, the head of Clinton's campaign headquarters. It would seem like a normal political routine, the boring correspondence of officials. But anonymous detectives from the 4chan and Reddit forums took up the case. Reading the emails, users paid attention to the frequent mention of food. Podesta and his colleagues regularly discussed orders of pizza, pasta, cheese, and hot dogs. Conspiracy theorists, prone to looking for hidden meanings everywhere, quickly compared this to darknet jargon. A creepy hypothesis was born: the words cheese and pizza, having the same initials as the English phrase child pornography, are encrypted terms. And the correspondence itself is the coordination of a secret international network of pedophiles, which includes America's top political elite. Soon, online sleuths also found the headquarters of this sinister cult. It turned out to be the popular family pizzeria Comet Ping Pong in Washington, whose owner was acquainted with Podesta's brother and donated money to the Democratic Party. The madness grew like a snowball. Photographs of children from the establishment owner's Instagram were subjected to paranoid analysis, and satanic symbols were sought in the pizzeria's logo. Fake news that children were kept in cages in the basements of Comet Ping Pong for rituals began to go viral on social networks at the speed of a forest fire. The climax came on December 4th, 2016. 28-year-old Edgar Madison Welch, having read enough of the forums, decided to become a hero. Armed with an AR-15 assault rifle, he arrived at the pizzeria to personally free the captive children. Welch fired several shots inside the building. Fortunately, no one was hurt. broke open locked doors, and found nothing. The building didn't even have a basement. Later, he surrendered to the police, admitting that the information on the internet turned out to be false. The theory was officially refuted by the police and all major media outlets. However, the Pizzagate phenomenon exposed a terrible truth about modern society. Why did people believe in it so easily? Partly because real criminal scandals, like the creepy and convoluted case of billionaire Jeffrey Epstein, proved to society influential elites are indeed capable of systemic and monstrous crimes. When the boundary between real conspiracies of the rich and inventions from image boards is blurred, any pizzeria can seem like the gates to hell. Pizzagate became the forerunner of the QAnon movement and showed how social media algorithms turn delusional hypotheses into a threat to life. Deep state. The concept itself sounds frightening and fascinating at the same time. It is claimed that behind the facade of democratic elections hides a real unelected power. This is a shadow network of high-ranking officials, generals, intelligence agents, and corporate representatives who pull the strings and determine the country's course, regardless of who sits in the presidential chair. Presidents come and go, but the deep state remains, guarding its interests and sabotaging unwanted politicians. Initially, this term appeared in Turkey, Darren Devlet, to describe a hidden alliance between the military, intelligence services, and even criminals. However, this theory experienced a true renaissance in the US in 2017. When Donald Trump's administration faced massive leaks of classified information to the media and high-profile resignations, for example, of National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Conservative media found the perfect explanation for this. They stated that a coordinated network of surviving loyalists from past administrations and top intelligence officials was working against the president. Why did this idea so easily capture the minds of millions? The secret is that it falls on the fertile ground of real historical precedents. When society learns about harsh declassified CIA programs or watches how influential billionaires and politicians evade justice for years, as was the case in the dark and convoluted Jeffrey Epstein affair, trust in official institutions crumbles. People see that elites and intelligence services can indeed act outside the law, covering for each other. From here, it is only one step to the belief that there is a single, monolithic, and sinister coordination center. But here lies the main trap. Political scientists note that the concept of the deep state has become an incredibly convenient political weapon. It turns banal bureaucratic inertia, professional disagreements of huge departments, and leaks from independent whistleblowers into a coherent, sinister plan. It is much easier to blame an invisible almighty enemy for all failures than to admit that the state machine is a clumsy, chaotic mechanism. In it, different influence groups constantly compete, make stupid mistakes, and by no means always act together. The escape of Adolf Hitler, April 1945. Berlin is on fire. Soviet troops are tightening the ring around the Reich Chancellery. According to the official version, on April 30, the Führer and Eva Braun commit suicide in a damp underground bunker, reeking of gunpowder and despair. Their bodies are hastily carried out into the garden, doused with gasoline, and burned beyond recognition. And it is precisely this hasty destruction of evidence that became the perfect soil for the birth of a legend that still makes one uneasy today. What if the charred corpses belonged to unfortunate doubles who were cold-bloodedly sacrificed? This thought began to poison minds almost immediately. Ironically, the seeds of doubt were sown by the Soviet leadership itself. Rumor had it that at the Potsdam Conference, Stalin casually whispered to the Allies, Hitler might have slipped away and is hiding in Spain or Argentina. The myth began to take on a terrifying reality when it became clear that thousands of Nazi criminals had indeed fled to South America via secret routes, the so-called rat lines. Conspiracy theorists paint a grim picture. Under the cover of night, the Führer leaves doomed Berlin. Next, a secret flight to Denmark, and from there, aboard a phantom submarine of a wolf pack across the Atlantic to the shores of Patagonia. For decades, FBI and CIA archives were replenished with hundreds of reports. Witnesses swore they saw the aging dictator in a luxurious, hidden estate in the Argentine Andes or in a quiet Colombian village. A real occult cult began to form around the disappearance. People started whispering about a secret base in the snows of Antarctica, New Swabia, where the rescued leader is allegedly biding his time. And in 2009, the world shuddered. A DNA analysis of a fragment of a pierced skull from the Moscow archives showed that the bone belonged to an unknown woman. Had history been lying to us for over half a century? Only recently, in 2018, an independent examination put an end to the story. The preserved fragments of the jaw and dental bridges were unmistakably identified as the genuine remains of Hitler. He did not leave that bunker, but the very thought that the architect of the greatest nightmare in history could have been secretly taken out, allowing him to peacefully live out his days in the Amazon jungle, is so unbearable that this phantom continues to roam the world, clinging to any, even the most insane theories. Reptilians. The concept that the world is ruled not by humans is as old as time, but it was in the internet era that it took on truly frightening, cold-blooded features. Imagine for a second, those you see every day on television screens, those who sign global laws and own transnational corporations are not entirely human. Under perfectly tailored suits and realistic masks hide ancient beings of a reptilian nature. They are capable of shape-shifting, lack empathy, and cold-bloodedly lead humanity to slaughter, like livestock on a farm. The architect of this modern mythology was the British writer David Icke. In the 90s, he built a monumental and chillingly detailed universe. According to his version, thousands of years ago, a race of lizard-like aliens arrived on Earth. In some interpretations, they are linked to the Anunnaki from Sumerian texts. They did not set out to exterminate us in open combat. Instead, they retreated into deep underground networks and created the Babylon Brotherhood. By crossbreeding their DNA with human DNA, they produced hybrid bloodlines whose representatives today sit on royal thrones and in presidential chairs. The most terrifying thing about this theory is how it resonates with the uncanny valley effect. On anonymous image boards and paranormal forums, users spend hours deconstructing speeches by politicians and show business stars frame by frame. They look for so-called glitches in the matrix, pupils suddenly narrowing into vertical slits, unnaturally scaly skin texture appearing on the neck in poor lighting, strange jaw movements, or blinking that reveals a gruesome second eyelid. Hundreds of frightening stories circulate online from people who have experienced sleep paralysis or abductions, describing not classic gray aliens, but tall, muscular lizards exuding icy, non-human contempt. Why is this myth so popular? People have become so alienated from their rulers, and the actions of the elites seem so inhuman, calculating, and cruel that our brains refuse to recognize them as our own species. It is psychologically more comfortable for us to believe that wars and crises are orchestrated by alien monsters in human suits, rather than by fellow humans of flesh and blood. And although video editing specialists have long explained reptilian eyes in recordings as banal artifacts of digital image compression and pixel defects, a shiver still runs down the spine. After all, the next time you look into the unblinking dead eyes of yet another billionaire on the screen, you will involuntarily ask yourself, who is looking back at me from the inside right now? The Great Reset. Imagine a world in which absolutely nothing belongs to you. Not an apartment, not a car, not even your own thoughts. A world where every action and purchase is evaluated by a soulless social credit algorithm. If you are obedient, you get access to benefits. If you ask unnecessary questions, your digital wallet is instantly blocked. and the doors of your rented capsule simply do not open. And the most terrifying thing, supporters of this theory are convinced that this dystopian nightmare is being presented to humanity under the guise of global salvation. It all started in 2020 when the world was paralyzed by an unknown disease. While people sat in their homes in sticky fear, a massive initiative, the Great Reset, was announced at the World Economic Forum, WEF. Its main ideologist, Klaus Schwab, proposed restructuring the economy, making it more eco-friendly and manageable. But conspiracy theorists like obsessed stalkers reading into the manifestos of secret cults saw in these speeches a sinister plan for total control. The famous phrase from the WEF promo video, "You will own nothing and you will be happy," sounded like an uncompromising sentence. According to the theory, the global lockdown was just an artificial rehearsal. The real goal is to break the old world, destroy the middle class, and force people to voluntarily give up basic freedoms in exchange for an illusion of security. On dark threads on the internet, this plan is described in chilling detail. Cash will disappear, giving way to digital currencies that the government can turn off with the push of a button. Traditional food will gradually be replaced by synthetic insect biomass. And the popular urban concept of 15-minute cities is supposedly the creation of invisible digital ghettos, leaving which without a special social QR code will be strictly forbidden. Why does this idea exude such hopelessness? Because the line between paranoia and reality here is frighteningly thin. We truly live in an era of continuous crises. Megacorporations collect terabytes of personal data about us, and surveillance technologies are developing too rapidly. Of course, officially, the Great Reset is just a loud slogan for discussing the post-COVID economy and green initiatives. But when algorithms once again frighteningly accurately guess your secret desire, and your phone obligingly offers to pay for a purchase by scanning your retina, it is hard to get rid of the cold, sinking feeling. What if the reset timer has already started, and we simply did not notice how we ended up in an invisible digital cage? September 11th, 2001. September 11th, 2001. A clear Tuesday morning. The whole world watches in a stupor a live broadcast as passenger Boeings crash into the steel monoliths of the Twin Towers. According to the official version, it was a daring and monstrous act of terrorism planned by Al-Qaeda. But the scale of the tragedy and the shock were so great that the human psyche simply refused to believe the dry government report. Where the commission put a full stop, conspiracy theorists saw only the beginning of a frightening and calculating scenario. The most chilling hypothesis, which still roams the dark corners of the internet, states it was a staged event, an inside job. Millions of people still obsessively study the collapse videos frame by frame, asking the same question. How could jet fuel melt massive steel beams? The towers fell at freefall speed, folding inwards so perfectly as if it were an industrial-controlled demolition. Surviving witnesses and firefighters swore they heard the muffled pops of detonators in the basements seconds before the skyscrapers began to crumble. And then there was the mysterious Building 7, a 47-story complex next door, which was not hit by a single plane, but which collapsed on the same day with the same frightening, unnatural symmetry. But the creepiest part lies in the details of the attack on the Pentagon. Online detectives still point out that the breach in the wall of the most guarded building on the planet was too small for a huge passenger airliner. And in the first photographs from the scene of the tragedy, almost no large debris was visible. A sinister theory emerged. A military missile struck the Pentagon, and the whole tragedy was a grandiose, bloody sacrifice, played out live for one cynical purpose. The government needed absolute carte blanche for endless wars in the Middle East, control over oil, and the passing of the Patriot Act, which forever crossed out the right to privacy. Mysticism is added by so-called predictive programming. Stalkers find creepy omens in the pop culture of the 90s, from music album covers to Neo's passport in The Matrix, which expired exactly on September 11th, 2001. As if the global architects of reality had left us clues in plain sight beforehand. And although structural engineers have long ago laid out the thermodynamics of the fire that weakened the load-bearing structures and explained the fall of Building 7 by a massive, uncontrolled fire, this wound still yawns. The fear of September 11th does not rely on physics. It feeds on a primal, paralyzing terror. What if the very structures that swore to protect you cold-bloodedly sacrificed you on the altar of the New World Order? Here we have reached the very bottom of our iceberg. If we look at all these levels, from Freemasons to Reptilians and digital control, a logical question arises. Why do people even continue to believe in this? The answer lies in psychology. The human brain absolutely cannot tolerate chaos. It is much more comfortable for us to think that the world is ruled by a secret syndicate with a sinister plan than to admit the frightening truth. The world is incredibly complex, full of randomness, and global catastrophes most often occur due to banal mistakes rather than at someone's command. A conspiracy theory always gives an illusion of control and a very understandable enemy. Today, social media algorithms only exacerbate the situation, locking us in information bubbles where any absurd rumor is instantly overgrown with pseudo-evidence. So, the main threat often comes not from the Illuminati in secret bunkers, but from our own willingness to believe in a convenient lie. With that, our dive is over. Write in the comments which of these theories seems the most plausible to you, and which is absolute nonsense. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss new breakdowns.